I'm Stephanie, and welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I review everything I read in last month, and this month we're talking about the books that I read in spooky season or October. Just kidding. But in all seriousness, welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I talk about all the books that I read in the last month, and we're going to be talking about the books that I read in October. And I am going to do my best to keep these reviews spoiler-free, or at least I will warn you if I am about to spoil something. And also, as I say in all my reviews, these are solely about the books and not about the authors as people. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the books that I read in October. So first up, we have a book that I did start reading in September, as my anniversary is at the end of the month, and I felt it was very appropriate to read a book with the word wedding in the title. So I picked up The Wedding People by Alison Espach. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. And this was an add-on to one of my Book of the Month boxes. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. It's a beautiful day in Newport, Rhode Island, when Phoebe Stone arrives at the Grand Cornwall Inn wearing a green dress and gold heels. Not a bag in sight. Alone. She's immediately mistaken by everyone in the lobby for one of the wedding people. But she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall who isn't here for the big event. Phoebe is here because she's dreamed of coming for years. She hoped to shuck oysters and take sunset sails with her husband, only now she's here without him, at rock bottom and determined to have one last decadent splurge on herself. Meanwhile, the bride has accounted for every detail and every possible disaster the weekend might yield, except for, well, Phoebe, and Phoebe's plan, which makes it that much more surprising when the two women can't stop confiding in each other. It, in turns absurdly funny and devastatingly tender, Alison Espach's The Wedding People is ultimately an incredibly nuanced and resonant look at the winding paths we can take to places we never imagined, and the chance encounters it sometimes takes to reroute us. So there's really no containing my reaction. I adored this. It is hilarious, it's moving, and at times kind of bittersweet, but also really hopeful and optimistic. And I could not put this down. This is a book that made me feel so many feelings. Like, one of my favorite books ever is 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella, as that book never fails to lift my spirits or pull me out of like a funky mood. And now this is going to be another go-to when I need to feel really good about life. Because this was absolutely amazing. In a way, it kind of reminded me of Listen for the Lie, as I was just not expecting this to be as funny as it was. I know it does say that it's funny, but a lot of times the book blurbs say certain things that don't end up panning out, but I was laughing so much while reading this. And again, comparing it to 20s Girl, some of the situations that happen are just so outlandish, but also so comical. And the banter between the two main characters is just absolutely hilarious. I really loved their relationship, and I loved watching each of their journeys as they realized like certain truths about their own lives and themselves through each other, because they don't have to hide who each person is. They're allowed to be completely themselves. And it just opens the door for some realizations. I really do think that this is what Really Good actually wanted to be. They touch on some similar themes, but The Wedding People does it so much better. Phoebe has some problems for sure, but she is still a lovable, sympathetic character. She's brave, kind, funny, and isn't just horrendously horrible to all the people around her. Unlike Maggie from Really Good, actually. I wanted to see Phoebe prevail and embrace a new version of herself. Maggie from Really Good, actually, could take a long walk off a pier for all I cared. This was a solid 5-star read for me. I loved every minute with this book. I know I am definitely going to reread this again in the future, and I'm really hopeful that I will love that reading experience too. I think overall it was just a fabulous read, and it's one that left me thinking for quite a while, and it's one that has definitely stayed with me for quite a while. It has heart, humor, and it really makes you think about life, and that it's never too late to get what you want or do what you really want to do. I also really just enjoyed Espach's writing style and found her writing to just be really beautiful in general. Now, I do want to give some trigger warnings for this, as this book is bittersweet due to some of the heavy topics addressed in this. We've got mentions of depression, suicidal ideation, infertility, and infidelity. If those are triggers for you, go into this cautiously or maybe just skip it. Be sure to always take care of you first, but if none of those are a trigger for you, then I highly, highly recommend this book because I just think it's amazing. Moving on, my first spooky read of the season was A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. And I mean, just look at this cover. Oh, that is so gorgeous. But let's go ahead and see what this one promised. Holly Sherwin has been a struggling playwright for years. But now, after receiving a grant to develop her play, Witching Night, she may finally be close to her big break. All she needs is time and space to bring her vision to life. When she stumbles across Hill House on a weekend getaway upstate, she is immediately taken in by the mansion, nearly hidden outside a remote village. It's enormous, old, and ever so eerie, the perfect place to develop and rehearse her play. Despite her own hesitations, Holly's girlfriend, Nisa, agrees to join Holly in renting the house for a month, and soon a troupe of actors, each with ghosts of their own, arrive. Yet, as they settle in, the house's peculiarities are made known. Strange creatures stalk the grounds, disturbing sounds echo through the halls, and time itself seems to shift. All too soon, Holly and her friends find themselves at odds, not just with one another, but with the house itself. It seems something has been waiting in Hill House all these years, and it no longer intends to walk alone. So this was fine. I really did enjoy that it committed to being spooky, and the creepy things started absolutely right away in this, but at the same time, I think that also kind of bugged me. The creepy things are happening before they've even rented the house, and our main girl, Holly, is freaked out before they even have the keys, and then she ends up choosing to stay there? One of the biggest problems with this book is that it relies on it being an idiot plot. These characters never act like real people. Stuff starts happening and they're all, this is fine, we love it here, even though we all secretly hate it. Then leave. You're not trapped there. I'd honestly have preferred it if they tried to get away from the house, but it wouldn't let them go. At least that would feel realistic to how humans actually behave and the scariness of Hill House. So I'm a little torn with this. I liked that it was legitimately eerie at times, but again, idiot plot. It requires Holly to come across as a doofus. And don't even get me started on her girlfriend Nisa. She annoyed me to no end and was so self-centered and rude. I would have given her a good punch to the throat because she's a singer and absolutely loves that. How are you gonna sing now, Nisa, after I've clocked ya? So not only was Nisa bad, but honestly, every character in this book is not that great. I'd have really loved for the characters to be likable at first, and then they're becoming influenced by the house, and then they become awful people. But they all start out unlikable. Honestly, even pretty insufferable. I just don't feel any tension around the things that might happen to them. The book does have some really creepy scenes and good scares, but it also felt like there were some interesting choices and taking of liberties here. Like, there's a lot of focus on witches and witchcraft that I felt didn't really fit with Hill House, and I love all things witches. It kind of reads like Hand wanted to write a story about witches and a haunted house, or even witches, or a play about witches, and then they come across a real coven, but then got the permission to use Hill House and just like smoosh the stories together without actually finessing out the details. I also think this book feels like it's moving a lot faster than it really is because the chapters are like 2 pages long. For real. I was on chapter 15, 50 pages in. So on one hand, if you like short chapters, this would be a great read because, my god, it just moves right along. Now, I will say there were a few scenes that played up the creepiness factor really well, but overall, I was just pretty underwhelmed by what should have been a fantastic haunted house story, as again, I truly hated these characters. No amount of creepiness happening around the house would have saved this, just because I hated everybody. I didn't care if they made it out of this. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars because some scenes were really well done, but mostly I was bored and again felt no attachment to any of the characters. I do have a wine club episode on this book, so if you don't care that it gets spoiled and you want to know fully what happens in it, please feel free to check out that video. But otherwise, I'd pass on this book. So next up was a werewolf story that I'd been saving for spooky season, and that is Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. And this was also a redemption read for Harrison, as I didn't exactly love my first title by her, which was Cackle. But I had already bought this before I read Cackle, as I went into that book fully expecting to love it based on the reviews I had read, and I really do like giving authors 2 chances because maybe Cackle just was not the book for me. So let's go ahead and see what Such Sharp Teeth promised. Rory Morris isn't thrilled to be moving back to her hometown, even if it's only temporary. There are bad memories there. But her twin sister, Scarlett, is pregnant, estranged from the baby's father, and needs support. So Rory returns to the place she thought she'd put in her rear view. After a night out at a bar, where she runs into an old, almost flame, she hits a large animal with her car. And when she gets out to investigate, she's attacked. Rory survives, miraculously, but life begins to look and feel different. She's unnaturally strong, with an aversion to silver, and suddenly the moon has her in its thrall. She's changing into someone else, something else, maybe even a monster. But does that mean she's putting those close to her in danger? Or is embracing the wildness inside her the key to acceptance? This dark comedic love story is a brilliantly layered portrait of trauma, rage, and vulnerability. So this totally redeemed Harrison for me. My God, this was so funny and so good. I loved Rory as a main character. She was so witty and sarcastic, but she also knew when enough was enough. She knew when not to make a snarky comment or a witty retort, and she never let her humor ruin a poignant moment. I loved her, and I loved her relationship with her twin sister Scarlett. Rory's story of becoming a werewolf is one that's filled with rage about what's happening to her and how she's losing control of her body and herself. It beautifully and perfectly mirrored Scarlett's pregnancy storyline. This is a story about change, letting go, forgiveness, finding love, both familial and romantic love. It was really interesting to see Rory's return to her hometown, as I'd probably feel the same way she did. She wasn't super excited to return, but did it for her sister. I liked my hometown while I was growing up there, but I'm not sure how I would feel if I had to go back there to live. It would be familiar, but would also be foreign because I would be so different. I'd expect to do the same things I did as a teen, but I'm also no longer in that stage of my life. And I think Harrison captured those feelings really well, of knowing the place, but also feeling like things are so different now, but it's still familiar. This was a monster story, but it's so real. At times, it was heartbreaking, but also super empowering. I thought there were some really excellent themes in this, and they were explored really well, and overall, I just really enjoyed my time reading this. This was a solid 4-star read for me. There were a few things that kept it from being a 5-star read, such as some of the pacing, the dialogue, and a little bit of the writing style. Harrison really loves short, choppy sentences. That got a little repetitive at times, but overall, this was a great book for spooky season. It's very chick lit meets supernatural as far as genres, and I absolutely loved it. Next up was It Will Just Be Us by Jo Kaplan. As Kaplan is an author that I've read before, and I really enjoyed her work in When the Night Bells Ring. I thought that book was so creepy, it was a good mystery, and I just generally liked that book. So when I heard that she had a haunted house / ghost story book, I immediately went out and bought it. So let's go ahead and see what this promised. They say there's a door in Wakefield that never opens. Sam Wakefield's ancestral home, a decaying mansion built on the edge of a swamp, isn't a place for children. Its labyrinthine halls, built by her mad ancestors, are filled with the echoes of the past, ghosts and memories knotted together as one. In the presence of phantoms, it's all Sam can do to disentangle the past from the present in her daily life. But when her pregnant sister Elizabeth moves in after a fight with her husband, something in the house shifts. Already navigating her tumultuous relationship with Elizabeth, Sam is even more unsettled by the appearance of a new ghost, a faceless boy who commits disturbing acts, threatening animals, terrorizing other children, and following Sam into the depths of the house, wielding a knife. When it becomes clear the boy is connected to a locked, forgotten room, one which is never entered, Sam realizes this ghost is not like the others. This boy brings doom. As Elizabeth's due date approaches, Sam must unravel the mysteries of Wakefield before her sister brings new life into a house marked by death. But as the faceless boy grows stronger, Sam will learn that some doors should stay closed, and some secrets are safer locked away forever. So, I gotta say, this was really rough. Whereas Harrison surprised me with a redemption with such sharp teeth, Kaplan disappointed me with this. This book does not start off to a good start. And I will say that it could have been going from Harrison's short, choppy sentences to flowery language, but I'll admit, I really struggled at first with this. I felt like I had to reread the same sentence twice to understand what was going on or what that sentence was trying to describe. There was some serious thesaurus abuse in the first few chapters that really took me out of the story. I was not going to look up all the words that I didn't know, as I would be putting this book down every other minute. That, on top of the really flowery prose, made this really hard to get into. Now, I will say it does improve and gets a lot less purpley, which is great, as the book is very unsettling and atmospheric, and I am glad that I pushed through, as the story is pretty interesting. The premise is strong in this one. I didn't think this is a typical, haunted house book. It's a unique twist that really focuses on the aspect of time and reality and the echoes of what has happened, which I did really like. And the description of the faceless boy scared the hell out of me. I was reading it in bed one night and did not dare look over my shoulder, as I knew he would be standing there staring at me with his eyeless eyes. There's a lot of great horror in this, and a lot of it concerns whether or not the house is actually haunted, or is it some sort of inherited madness. It felt really reminiscent of The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, which is hilarious since I read another book based on that same kind of story. But I will say some of these scenes felt a little inspired by the show, though I do wish that the characters in this were a lot more relatable and deep, like the ones in The Haunting of Hill House. I did not feel super connected to any of the characters, and for a book with such deep themes, I never really got to know Sam on a deeper level. She's not an easy character to describe because her characterization is very, very thin. There's also a lot of lore happening in here, and I wish it had connected or lined up a little bit better, because we've got echoes, we've got the faceless demon boy, we've got a witch in the swamp, essentially a zombie, and then some people that are sensitive to other worlds. It just was a lot that never felt really flushed out or cohesive or really worked together. Also, I have to say, I was skimming by the end and was really just ready for this book to be over with. The pacing in this it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's plodding and doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. And again, the writing probably does have a lot to do with that feeling. But we revisit the same things over and over and over again. And then we have this extremely rushed, but also at the same time kind of slow ending. And I have no idea what was going on. The ending is depressing and made me feel the reading experience was kind of meaningless. I just, I do really hate to rate this so low, as I did like When the Night Bells Ring by Kaplan, but this was not great. I had such high hopes for this, but really dreaded picking this up, and I do think that this particular book really did slow down my reading pace for October, just because I could read like 5 pages and then have to put it down, or I'd read 5 pages and fall asleep. I had no incentive to keep picking this back up. At the end of the day, this is kind of rambly, it's really slow, repetitive, and again, ultimately boring. I wanted to give it 3 stars just for the idea and some of the creepy scenes, because again, they were done really well, but I can't. This is definitely in the 2-star range, and I think I'm going to end up giving it a 2.5, even though I really do think it's more of a 2-star read. But there were some redeeming qualities in this, so I'm going to give it 2.5, but not, I'm disappointed in this one. So I did end October with a book that takes place on Halloween night, and that is All Hallows by Christopher Golden. And this is my first title by Golden, but let's go ahead and see what this promised. It's Halloween night, 1984, in Coventry, Massachusetts, and 2 families are unraveling. Up and down the street, secrets are being revealed, and all the while, mixed in with the trick-or-treaters of all ages, 4 children who do not belong are walking door to door, merging with the kids of Parmenter Road. Children in vintage costumes with faded, eerie makeup. They seem terrified, and they beg the neighborhood kids to hide them away, to keep them safe from the cunning man. There's a small clearing in the woods, now that was never there before, and a blackthorn tree that doesn't belong at all. These odd children claim that the cunning man is coming for them, and that they want the local kids to protect them. But with families falling apart and the neighborhood splintered by bitterness, who will save the children of Parmenter Road? All Hallows, the one night when everything is a mask. So all in, I really enjoyed this for a Halloween read. It was spooky, had a fun 80s nostalgia vibe, and really reminded me of the Halloweens of my youth, even though 10 years later, but close enough. And I thought it did have an interesting cast of characters. On that note though, I do think the cast of characters was rather large, and some of them were hard to keep differentiated. There are 3 teen girl characters, and their voices started to sound very samey, and some of them have similar storylines or arcs, so there were times when I got confused, and when I would get to their point of views, I really had to think about like, okay, you're connected to this person, or oh, you're this person's kid, or you're hanging out with this guy. Oh, okay, I understand which teen girl this is. You're Julia, I got it. And then I could keep reading, which did detract from my reading experience a little bit. I do think the adult characters were a lot easier to keep separate, but really everyone in this neighborhood is just having a terrible Halloween night. Scandals are being revealed, secrets are coming out, there's a haunted maze in the woods, and creepy ass little kids that just don't quite fit in are running around. I did really enjoy Golden's writing style and found some passages of his really moving and, forgive the pun, but hauntingly beautiful. I also thought the setting was really good, and I had absolutely no trouble picturing these woods or the kids running around in the neighborhood. I think his descriptions are very strong. I also think he does really well in creating that sense of anticipation or just knowing that something is about to happen, and I was really eager to see how all of the character stories would intersect. I did see on Goodreads some reviews that compare this to Stranger Things, and I do get that comparison, as it's the mid-80s. We're following some kids as they encounter, well, stranger kids, and there's some supernatural stuff happening. And waiting to see how all the characters would come together and share what they know and how to fight this evil was also very reminiscent of the show. There's this sense of building and foreboding as you want to know what's going on. But at the same time, also knowing that maybe you don't really want to know what's going on and just close your eyes. Now, I do wish that the lore had been established more. I generally got what was going on, but I think I just wanted more from this. Now, I can't really speak too much about that without spoiling things, but I will say what was going on with like the Cunning Man started out really simple with these kids running away from him. But then it just kept like adding bits and pieces, which did make it more complex, but also more convoluted and left me more confused. I wanted some explanations for the things that happened and how they happened and why. Because at the end of the day, with how it all plays out, I didn't fully understand the Cunning Man and what he was doing or what his motivations were. And so, again, I wish a little bit more time had been spent on explaining that or building that out, or honestly, if the horror stuff had been more of a feature in the book. For a story that is about a creepy Halloween night, I would say that portion is like 40% of the book, and the rest of it is about like the dramas and the secrets that are being unfolded. But I will say, all in, I am going to give this 4 stars. I did think it was creepy, gory, and had some horror elements that I really liked, especially, again, for a book that I did end up reading on Halloween night. This was a book that I was eager to pick up and read super late into the night. It was entertaining and, all in, a really good read for spooky season. That said, I do think that my rating probably would have been different if I had read this at a different time of year. I was in the mood for Halloween, and it does deliver on that, but like I said, it does go a little bit off on tangents, and there's a lot of focus on the domestic drama that does get a bit repetitive. But since I did read this on Halloween, I liked it. I would have really loved it, though, had it been more focused on the creepy stuff and less on the drama, but it is what it is. So, if you have any recommendations for what I should read in November, please leave them in the comments, though I honestly have so many overflow books from my October to be read pile that I'm still going to be in like spooky mode for at least the first half of November. But please do leave your recommendations if you've read anything really fantastic lately. I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, thanks for joining me in the reading room.